Welcome to Paying Attention with Nicholas Gruen. This is a show where we take you beneath the surface of public affairs, economics, and government using nothing more than our secret superpower, paying attention. I'm your host, Matt Jones. In another video, Nicholas Gruen explored his idea of a public-private digital partnership using the example of 23andMe. 23andMe does a partial analysis of your genome, which can give you important information about yourself and your ancestry and any genetic abnormalities that you may have that make you susceptible to specific diseases. But genomic analysis is expensive, so unlike Google and Facebook, which fund their free service from advertising, 23andMe charges for its service. Nicholas's idea is to turn ideas like 23andMe from a private good into a public good by getting government to fund the cost. That would make 23andMe free for all users. Nicholas, can you tell us more about this idea?
Thanks, Matt. Well, I've got some big claims to make. First, as governments help convert 23andMe from a private good sold for a price to a free public good available to all, it vastly increases its value. Let's break down where that increased value comes from. 1, more people benefit from the service. A lot more people. 2, serving more people creates a larger database of genomes, and that makes it much more valuable for research. 3, public involvement means that once privacy is secured, the data can be made available as a free research asset for anyone who wants to use it. 4, the data can be used not just in research, it can be used to help doctors diagnose conditions. And 5, it helps the health system target population-based screening. For instance, your genome might identify that you have a heightened risk of colorectal cancer. The Australian government and lots of other governments already screen people over 50 every 5 years. But if they know that you're at risk, then you can be screened earlier and more often.
So how would something like this work? And would it work for other digital goods and services?
Well, that brings me to my next big claim. 23andMe is just one example. There are plenty more where that came from. With any service sold online, just ask whether it might be converted from a private to a public good in a similar way. Take accounting. Most small businesses buy online accounting services from private providers like Xero and Intuit. They pay around $500 a year or more. Government could competitively tender for a service provider to give free accounting software to all small businesses wanting it in their jurisdiction. That makes accounting for small business a public good. Now we get the same kinds of benefits we saw with 23andMe. 1, governments bulk buying from the market could get a much better group price than the sum of all small business subscriptions. And 2, being free, more businesses would use it. But just as with 23andMe, there are new advantages from aggregating all the data. It could provide incredibly fine-grained information on what businesses were doing where. For instance, during the recent COVID pandemic, we could investigate how much spending fell in the precise area where a cluster of infection was detected. That information could be incredibly useful to government in managing the economy, in its policies towards different regions, for instance. It could understand precisely what was happening with spending, investment and payroll at a micro level, location by location and across systems.
But what about concerns that a lot of individual data will eventually be owned by the government? Couldn't that mean that the government employee might be able to read my tax records, medical history and everything else about me in one single location?
Indeed. So there are various ways to handle that. Government could say, so what? Businesses who don't want the free software needn't use it. Individuals who don't want the government to own their genome don't have to use the service, just as they don't have to use 23andMe's service right now. Government could also guarantee people that their data would be anonymised, It could guarantee them that it would never be used by tax authorities. It's up to governments how they want to handle it. Another service for sale is medical practice software. That's the software your doctor uses. It's got your details on it and all the details of each consultation. Not only would the software be available at a more efficient price, zero, it would generate very high resolution data on every consultation recorded on it, generating very fine-grained data on the health of the population, what conditions and diseases were afflicting people and where, what was being prescribed for them, and how successful those treatments were. The digital world is profoundly different to the analog world. It's time we started paying more attention to that fact. If we did, we could hugely improve our world.